Board of Education is called to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Here.
Mr. Cebulski?
Here.
Mr. Zayas?
Here.
Mr. Akam and Mrs. Connor are absent tonight.
All right, and it's July, so we have no special reports or recognitions this evening. We'll move on to hearing of the public on agenda and non-agenda items. This period of the board meeting is allocated to hearing public comments on both agenda and non-agenda items. The board and administration do not respond at board meetings to questions from the audience. The public comment period is a maximum of 30 minutes, and each speaker will be limited to a total time of 3 minutes. The board treasurer will keep the time, and each person addressing the board is requested to provide his or her name and address upon being recognized by the chair, and the treasurer will include this information in the board meeting minutes. All right, so first up I have Iris Smith. You can come up to the podium, please. Are they coming together?
I'll come together.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Iris is first. Okay.
Iris,
ahead,
is
you
that
wanna-
green light on? I'm sorry.
Hello.
And Bill, I have her address. Will you state your address since you're going?
My name is Iris Smith, and my address is 502-9 Overlook Drive.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Iris Smith, and I will be a junior at Aurora High School. I'm here today to discuss why a girls' wrestling team is needed now at our schools. My desire for wrestling started when my close friend Carlina asked me if I wanted to attend a wrestling tournament with her and to do the stats for the boys' team. That led into us doing stats for the past 2 years at tournaments, duels, and pretty much every event involved with the boys' team. Throughout these experiences, I became more and more interested in wrestling. I began to think about why there was not a girls' team. I heard things like wrestling is a boys' sport, it's too hard, it's too much work, it's painful, girls aren't strong enough to compete in this way. Just because I'm a girl doesn't mean that I'm not capable of accomplishing that and more. Anyone who puts in the time, effort, and has the attitude to want to do something can do so. I have put my whole summer towards training as of this moment and have been working very hard towards what I've wanted to do now for a while. Prior to this, I've lettered in 2 sports here at Aurora High School, but hands down, wrestling has so far shown and taught me and many other girls very important things such as confidence, grit, empowerment, resilience, mental toughness, self-esteem, and discipline. If you look around this room tonight, you will see that I'm not alone in my views. I'm also not alone in Ohio because Ohio High School Athletic Association finally sanctioned girls wrestling in 2022. And for the first time in history this past winter, girls who love wrestling as much as I do are being formally acknowledged, treated fairly, and most importantly, girls who love wrestling are now allowed to train, compete, and demonstrate their skills and passion for wrestling, just like the boys have been able to do for many, many years. This passion is why girls wrestling is the fastest growing high school and college sport in Ohio and nationwide. Just this summer alone, within 30 miles, I have met countless girls who feel just as me, whose schools and communities have embraced them and helped them create their first official high school girls wrestling teams, including, but not limited to, Akron North, Walsh, Kenston, Mogador, Mentor, and Perry schools. This summer, I also attended 2 local college girls wrestling camps held at John Carroll University and Hiram College, who just began their wrestling programs too, along with Baldwin Wallace and Otterbein. The coaches there talked about so many scholarship opportunities for girls wrestling too. In addition, there are also 2 local wrestling clubs that I met with who are really excited about starting their first girls club wrestling teams, one of which I train with 4 days a week. In closing, right now, girls are making history, and the possibilities for girls and girls wrestling programs is boundless. My hope is that Aurora City Schools will see the value in this and make history as well by creating their first girls wrestling team this upcoming school year. Thank you for your time and interest. Go Aurora Girls Wrestling and go Green Men.
Thank you. Okay. Anna? Okay, go ahead. Can you state your full name and your address too, please?
My name is Anna Brazel. I live at 256 Chelmsford Drive. Good evening, everyone in Aurora Board members of Education. My name is Anna Brazel. I'm an 8th grader at Harmon Middle School. I have been wrestling for 2 years. I wrestled for Jaws and Harmon last year. I'm also a member of the Ohio Girls National Team. Wrestling is a sport like no other. It is a movement, community, and family. Wrestling is for all girls. The sport provides strength training, teaches discipline, and self-respect. January 13, 2022, the Ohio High School Athletic Association named girls wrestling as an official sport. March 11, 2023, Ohio girls made history at the first girls high school state wrestling tournament in Columbus, where 136 high schoolers were represented by girls, and 224 girls wrestled on the mat next to the boys, being fully included. Girls wrestling is one of the fastest growing sports in 39 states. Have officially sanctioned girls wrestling. Most recently in Fargo, 87 girls represented Ohio compared to only 16 a few years ago. Having girls wrestling as a sport, Aurora schools will encourage other girls in our community to try something new and continue to build resilience. Neighboring communities have already built team girls. Wrestlings have taught me to work hard, push myself, and allowed me an opportunity for growth. The lesson learned from wrestling applied both on and off the mat. By having girls wrestling as an official sport, other girls in Aurora will be empowered too. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Carlina.
Do you want me to say my
Yes,
name?
please.
Hi, I'm Carlina Spohr, and I live at 503 Fox Run Trail. Hi, my name is Carlina Spohr, and I'm here to talk about wrestling and what it means to me and what it can mean to the future students at Aurora. The start of middle school is when I first started wrestling, but on the boys' team. As you can imagine, that is not the most ideal place of where I wanted to be wrestling, but I tried to push through because it was a sport I wanted to try. Although I didn't have a partner to wrestle with or anyone to practice with outside of school, I managed to work my way through it. Yet, I had a difficult time trying to fit in. I didn't feel included or a part of the team. No one would be my partner because they didn't want to be beat by a girl, even though it was just for practice. And I can't blame them for not wanting to put their hands on me because my body was built different than theirs. Some days, I even showed up to school when there was no practice because no one felt the need to inform me that it was canceled. Some might say that it was the team's fault for me being uncomfortable and that it can be easily fixed with just a talking to, but I disagree. It would have taken me a long time to get comfortable regardless of how they treated me. I ended up quitting. I don't quit, and that's why I'm here today to get a women's wrestling team for Aurora. Over the course of the summer, I've joined clubs, and I've been to camps that were both hours away to try and make this my sport. I've also done research to show that women's wrestling is one of the fastest growing sports among girls in the United States. Since 1994, the number of women who wrestle in high school has gone from 804 to more than 50,000. Girls have grown a huge interest in this sport, and so have many places nationwide. They've been supporting this growth and giving girls their own team instead of just saying no because they can't believe that they can do it. Yes, wrestling is a very tough sport. It requires a great deal of strength, endurance, agility, strategy, and quick thinking. Me, Iris, and Anna, and more than 50,000 other women are willing to put themselves in a place where we have to do all these things, so eventually we can develop confidence, grit, resilience, mental toughness, self-esteem, self-resilience, and discipline. Let's also mention that wrestling teaches basic self-defense and encourages personal fitness. And although you might think that since we already have a self-defense class here and gym that there's no need for all this, but wrestling is so much more different than gym class or lifting a couple weights per year in the school gym. The Aurora School District should gladly be providing a women's wrestling team because Aurora supports new ways to give students the chance to find themselves, create better opportunities for college, and physical improvement as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris, Anna, and Carlina. I'm going to ask Mr. Roberto to give you a brief overview of what you need to do next in your quest.
All right, great job, first of all. We appreciate you coming in tonight and sharing your view and also supporting your side of things with evidence, so that was great. So next step is to contact Mr. Hayes once school gets going. He'll be back actually next week on the 31st. And he will set you up with a form to complete, which would be a club status form. So you'll go through that and complete everything. It'll be things like coaches, practices, things like this that you might have answers to or might have ideas for, so that he gets a feel for what would be the next steps for that. And then he will bring that to Mr. Powers, because it's a sport. You could do this for chess club and he wouldn't have to go to Mr. Powers, but because it is a sport, we'll go through the athletic department and then we'll sit down and take a look at your proposal. So first step is Mr. Hayes with the club form. Okay? Great.
Okay, and thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. All right, next is Deb Conti.
Deb Conti, 234 South Chillicothe Road. I just had some questions about the item on the agenda. I believe it's E1D. It's the replacement roof for the auxiliary gym. First of all, I'd like to know, is it a typical flat roof? There's a lot of flat roofs on gyms. Second thing is I'd like to know the age of the current roof that you're replacing and what materials are on the current roof. I'm interested in the cost of the replacement roof. Also, what materials are going to be used, if it's the same materials or different materials on this roof that we're replacing. And the last question is, what is the warranty of the new materials being applied to the roof? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Did you get the questions all written out there, Mr. Voss?
Okay. We probably fix that. That's what most-
Yeah, we'll hit Mr. Arquilla on this, but first of all, where's the roof, the flat, whether it be a flat roof or not, the age, the materials, that it currently has materials being used for the new roof, whether there is a warranty with the roof. I think that was everything.
Did we get your?
Yeah.
Okay, so someone will get back to you. Do you want to give us an email address or something? Or how do you want us to contact you? A phone number?
Email's fine.
Okay, what is it?
It's my last name,
Mhm.
C-O-N-T-I. And then Dab, D-A-B, at yahoo.com.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we will move to the approval of minutes. We had a special meeting on June 1st and a regular meeting on June 26th. May I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Second?
Are there any comments or edits, additions to those minutes? All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes. Minutes are approved as written. We have no superintendent report tonight, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Mr. Volleson.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mahalis. So I have, 4 resolutions for your consideration, and we'll start with the financial statements for the month of June, which is obviously the last month of the fiscal year. And for June, our expenditures exceeded revenues by about $4.3 million, which decreases our general fund cash balance to about $12.5 million at the end of the fiscal year. Revenues were about 5% greater than projected, while expenditures were 9% greater. One item on the revenue side, we did receive our special education catastrophic aid reimbursement through the state of Ohio. This year we received a little over $240,000, which is a little more than last year. We received $228,000, and in previous years we were in the $120-some thousand. You can see on the report. So it kind of varies by year, depending, and really what it comes down to, it depends on, it's kind of budgeted at the state level after the fact. So they get all the requests in, they know how much money they have, and then they divvy it out proportionately to all the school districts. So the higher the amounts are throughout the state, then you'll get less money. That's what it comes down to. On the expenditure side, June was a 3 payroll month, which obviously will increase our personnel costs, and roughly over $1 million is what each payroll is. So that's $1 million more than normal. And we also have larger advances out this year about 500,000 greater than previous years, and that's mainly because of the ESSER funds that we have to expend in the next fiscal year. So this advanced out, and that those monies will be paid back into the general fund once we do receive the dollars from through the state. So thus far, for the fiscal year, our revenues were about 688,000 greater than projected, and expenditures about 390,000 greater. So we did have a favorable variance of about $300,000 for the fiscal year. Our cash balance is $12.5 million with an available unencumbered fund balance of about $11.9 million. So that subtracts out encumbrances that are at the end of the year. And what I've done, you'll see in there, you should have a spreadsheet which shows a comparison between fiscal year 22, which was last year, and then fiscal year 23, which is the current year that we were reporting on. And what you could see on there is operating revenues, which is line 1.07, increased by $1.4 million, about 3.5%. Now, 400,000 of that increase was a result of an increase in our interest on investments. As interest rates have gone up, that is a positive thing, obviously, for our investment dollars. So about 400,000 additional dollars came in there. Our operating expenditures increased by $3.6 million, mainly as a result of several different things. We have new employee contracts. We had one additional payroll this year. So instead of 26, we had 27 pays, which came this fiscal year. And when you pay every other week, this happens once every 7 years or so. So next year, when you see the report, personnel expenditures won't grow that much because it'll be one less payroll than what we had. So that'll be, I guess, a benefit next year. Also, we had about a 6% overall increase in our health care benefits. So those are the main driving forces behind that. So overall, the district expended about $1.4 million more than it received, which decreased our cash balance to the $12.569 million, or about 3.5 months of expenditures. Another thing to look at in our non-personnel related areas, we actually expended less this year than we did the previous year, by about $127,000. So for items such as utilities, fuel for buses, cleaning supplies, textbooks, instructional supplies, we did spend a little bit less. And then a second spreadsheet that I've attached, it's kind of a 5-year history. So when you look at the 5-year history, you could see that our revenues over the 5 years, so going back to fiscal year 19, our revenues increased 11.76% over a 5-year period. If you then look at line 4.5, our expenditures increased about 17.5% over this 5-year period. So obviously our expenditures have been growing quicker than what our revenues have, and that has obviously put us into the position where, you know, we have to ask for new money as we start the next fiscal year, so that as this trend will continue, at some point then we would be, once deficit spending starts, it's tough to get out.
Just a matter of time.
Right. And then the other thing really to look at, the non-personnel expenditures were actually, we spent less this year than we did in fiscal year 19. So a lot of the items that can be controlled, or more easily controlled budget-wise, have been kept pretty much constant for the last 5 years. So between obviously Mr. Cicatelli, the past superintendent, Mr. Roberta, who's been here the last several years, have all done a good job in maintaining the budgets as best they can, especially in the period of rising costs, which we've seen especially in these last 2 years with inflation. And so that is the general fund financial report for June, which kind of summarizes what we did for fiscal year 23.
The fiscal year, okay. Thank you for that and for the spreadsheets. Exhibit D1 is a resolution to approve financial statements and reports. May I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Okay, that takes us to Exhibit D2, which is a resolution to approve a then and now statement, and this is for Precious Cargo, and it was for a trip, I believe athletic department trip, that the bill was received before the purchase order was processed.
Okay. May I have a motion for approval?
Move.
Chair seconds. Any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
All right, resolution is approved.
Next resolution is advances. It's a resolution to approve appropriation amendments. And these are all advances to start the year. It's $218,500 in advances. These will all be paid back to the general fund. The first one's $80,000 into food service, as we incur costs in July and the beginning of August before we serve lunches. So we need to kind of front the money. Then once school starts, the students will be paying for lunches. We'll get our different federal reimbursements, and then this money will be paid back. The remainder of the advances are all for federal funds. And the same thing as the federal funds, we have to get everything approved, but some of the spending is starting. So once everything's approved at the state level, then the money will start coming from the state, and we will then pay all of this back to the general fund. So it's just a matter of, it's kind of a loan from the general fund to these funds until the actual dollars come to us.
All right, so we have a resolution to approve the appropriation amendments. May I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Second.
Comments or questions? All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
And then the final one is appropriation amendments. Last month, we passed kind of our permanent appropriation measure to get started. And what we've done now is we have to make some amendments to cover purchase orders, which will go out, so on and so forth. The biggest ones are obviously general funds, so we have, these additional advances going out and different purchase orders. So even though we're appropriating all of this, we'll never spend how much we've appropriated, but this allows us at least to process the purchase orders. The other major items then are in again, federal programs, the ESSER funds, increasing that appropriation to cover what we will spend, as we have to expend the vast majority of them this fiscal year, and actually by September of 24, they'll have to all be expended. A few other smaller areas, food service, there's increasing the appropriation there based upon what food costs are and what we anticipate what we'll be spending there, and also some in our permanent improvement fund, as there are some additional projects that we're kind of looking to move ahead just based upon our particular needs that we have coming up.
Okay. Exhibit D4, resolution to approve the amended 23-24 permanent appropriations. May I have a motion for approval?
Move.
Chair seconds. Any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Okay, that
Resolution is approved. Thank you for
concludes
your
my
report.
report.
All right, under new business, we have a resolution to accept gifts and contributions. We have a $200 donation from Charities Aid Foundation to the boys soccer program. May I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Second.
So we thank the Charities Aid Foundation for that. Any other comments? All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Resolution is approved. Under personnel issues, we have 8 resolutions in front of us, and I'll take them together. I'll read through them one at a time. Exhibit E1B1 is a resolution to accept resignations. Exhibit E1B2 is a resolution to award supplemental and extended time contracts to district personnel. Exhibit E1B3 is a resolution to award a summer supplemental contract. Exhibit E1B4 is a resolution to award one teacher a 1-year contract and one teacher a 2-year contract. Exhibit E1B5 is a resolution to approve the introductory appointment of support staff. Exhibit E1B6 is a resolution to award supplemental pupil activity contracts to non-district personnel. Exhibit E1B7 is a resolution to recall a reading specialist from a reduction in staff status. And then Exhibit E1B8 is a resolution to employ the same person as our reading specialist at Layton. May I have a motion for approval?
Move.
Second?
Any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Resolutions are approved. Exhibit E1C is a resolution to establish lunch prices for next school year, the 23-24 school year. May I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Chair seconds. Are these an increase or the same?
They are 20 cents more from last year, which is still a great bargain for our
Yeah.
lunch, a good lunch.
Right. Any other comments or questions? All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Resolution is approved. Exhibit E1D is a resolution to accept bids and award a contract for the Aurora High School auxiliary gym roof replacement. May I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Do you want to just give us a little brief explanation? I'm sure you've done that already.
Yeah, and Sal, I don't know if you, in terms of the auxiliary gym, I know that they came through and gave us the prices and things like this. The age of it is, it's past its point. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same type of roof that we replaced in the black rubber roof, and all the parapet walls need to be replaced. Have to double check that, I believe it's
Okay, we'll get all that
Yeah,
information. Yeah.
Those are all the things that Mrs. Conti asked
Right.
about. We'll get together for.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a question I have is there a reason we didn't secure more than one bid?
Yes, we had 7 companies show up for the bid,
Okay.
and we only got the one bid because roofing materials are very hard to make, so we wanted it done quickly, as quickly as possible. This is one bigger company.
Okay. All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
And then finally, Exhibit E1E is a resolution to approve an out-of-state and overnight field trip for the Harmon students headed to Washington, D.C. May I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Second?
Any comments or questions? Is this pretty much the same as the typical trip?
Yes, this is the second time that we'll be heading to the Hilton, Washington and Dulles, because the place that we have, because of COVID, actually shut down prior to that, and they had a great experience last year, so heading back for year 2.
Great. Okay, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes. All right, are there any board items? All right, and with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Moved.
Second.
Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Zayas?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
And Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes, meeting is adjourned.